All right. Dr. Mulvey, welcome back to Interstices.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
It's all I asked you to do is just come down into the basement and take a seat, put some headphones on, and here we are. Yeah. Awesome. Hey, so I've been wanting to have a conversation just for the past couple of weeks, actually, with you about just about what you see is going on. And
you got to give me more than that.
I'm going to give you more than that, right? And so what I want to ask you is what have you learned these past 2 weeks since the election, and what have you learned? And we don't. If I'm going to see if something comes to mind, because I know how you operate. It's like I got to ask you something, and then you go. And if you don't, I have a variation of that question. But I thought I would just start right there if I could. It's just in the past couple weeks since the election. I know that we haven't talked much about it, so I really don't have much of an idea as to kind of what you're thinking.
I don't know that I've learned. I mean, I'm sure I've learned things, so I just can't. That's just way too big of a question for the past 2 weeks. But I can say that I think that we've been predicting what's happening for at least a year. So I've learned that a lot of predictions are actually accurate in the sense of what kind of divisions there would be, what would be the response to the election, what would be the things happening on the way to the election, how citizens would divide themselves and respond in their divisions. So I don't know what to say I've learned about that. It is notable to me, though. It's too soon. Much else. I wish, though, I'd like us to be a little less predictable. I mean, I guess what I mean is we
us?
mean humans. Because the fact that we're so predictable about how we'll be I was going to say how we'll be divided, but I mean our behavior and how easy it is to divide us and keep us divided, et cetera. It's just how easily we can be manipulated and are manipulated.
So can you say more about that when you say easily?
I don't know. I feel like you're taking me into territory that's just Laurie, the armchair observer of life, and I don't know that I'm prepared to be too thoughtful about this kind of thing. I mean, I'm living it like everybody else.
Yeah, okay. So here, let me say, when you say that, let me just say something that's kind of been on my mind on one hand, that I've been wondering when I think about predictability and I think about human beings, kind of being swayed or led or something like that. Part of me thinks that's not a problem, right? Because it's an isness thing.
Plus it's not. I mean, it's pretty broad brushstrokes, right? So it's not like you're predicting individual people's behavior. You're just picturing masses of people and what will happen in mass, like really huge trends.
Yeah, and you and I just speaking as sociologists, right? So if we remove ourselves and just think about that, I think, well, there's nothing wrong with people moving in mass together, right? There's nothing wrong with people following other people. I mean, this is what we want most of the time. We want people to follow rules, follow each other.
Well, we just don't want chaos.
Yeah, which is why following is actually pretty good.
Well, it's why all forces of nature, they go between order and chaos, right? Because chaos is something that actually is a force that kind of shuffles things around and then like recreates, and therefore is a creative force, but you can't have endless chaos. So then eventually things move toward order. And then too much order, or eventually at a certain point in order of whatever it is, whatever system from, the micro level to the macro level, will then move back toward, if you will, rejuvenating, it seems anyway, from my observation, to life itself. So yeah, we can always predict that it's going to go back and forth between chaos and order. Chaos, I'm just saying, using that term, not that it's always chaotic, but, or at least it doesn't fit the extreme when we think of chaos. anyway, so it's just is. I agree with you. It's not good or bad. We want order because we're a certain kind of person or we have a certain ideology. It's just systems move toward order and then they break down and move toward chaos and then they move toward order.
But one thing that for me actually is it's actually a bit striking how much. So everybody talks about the polarization, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just read something very briefly today about Obama saying something about the nature of the divisions, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
really deep, and I mean, it's nothing new, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I take a step back. What's really fascinating is how much people kind of center around the mean, whatever that mean is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I don't really know what it is, but whatever it is, and so we've got these sort of kind of two polarized visions, but you got large groups of the population that are still built around those divisions.
I disagree. We've talked about this before. I disagree that it's so simple, like we have these two visions. No, we don't. We have two choices. And then, quote unquote, everything needs to fit underneath them. And I think that when you start looking underneath, like what is conservative or what is Republican or Democrat or et cetera, you start to see all the spectrum of things.
It's, right.
It's so utterly tiring to hear about this. It's like duality of life. Yes, there are two sides. Okay. But that doesn't mean that that's exactly how people are thinking, And then I've seen now in like the recent news cycles of the past couple of days, now it's okay. Now in the Democratic Party, the extremes of the party are breaking with the other side. It's like, come on, everybody. That's because people are moving toward thoughtfulness. I mean, I don't know. I really feel like it's toxic to keep talking about polarization. And I actually feel like it feeds some idea that that's all there is. There's one or the other. And I don't know. So there's
so I'm with
my
you
entire life is based on ideas about this. So I don't know that I can keep. I'm not really sure. It's like I have so much to say, but I don't really want to just keep hitting the same note over and over again. Okay. In terms of the election, because the election has happened. We have voted for one or the other, and now we have that. So that is not much more to say.
So hang on, let me ask you this. Once again, I'm going to go back to the initial question. What have you learned in the past couple of weeks? Has there been anything? Maybe there's nothing.
In relation to what? Because I actually...
Anything at all. I say the last 2 weeks, so I'm not thinking about, your garden and different things, right? But maybe that's what we're looking at, right? Maybe you haven't learned anything other than what you've learned in your garden, but do you have any insights?
I feel like I have just... I'm not noticing anything new at this point. That's why I'm saying, like, we can keep talking about the same thing, but I can't answer that it's something new.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the idea that we have to keep checking the news every day to see if something new is going to happen, it's not. It's pretty much
the same.
Yeah,
I would agree with you. So let me say, and I agree. I haven't seen anything new.
Well, again, but this is like, I don't mean that I'm not, life is very complex and very dynamic and all of those things. So I don't think I can answer the way you want me to answer right now.
No,
in the
I don't
sense
have
of
a
what
way that I want you to answer.
I don't think that there have been major revelations in anything that we've seen. One, because they've been predicted, and two, because people are operating the way we would expect people to operate in this moment.
Yes.
And that is from the huge satellite view of the Earth. In terms of like, what are people saying person to person? I see the same kind of level of thinking that I always see, that doesn't fit the binaries, but that unfortunately people feel that they have to fit the binary. It's just an endless, I mean, if we want to go all the way down those kinds of paths, I can. I just, I really, maybe I can say that I'm seeing that people can still actually talk. I mean, we have 25 dialogues a day, every day. So
And
people are still doing that.
And nobody's fighting and battling
I
each
don't
other.
I wouldn't, not that people are doing what they always do. They're about things that we disagree about, right? So this isn't it's a new field for us just in terms of this national or historical moment, but it's not in terms of people coming together to talk about something uncomfortable. So maybe it's important to say we're seeing pretty much what we see, which is people, when they're given the space to say things that, that are genuine to them, they can warm up to it, and they do when they warm up to it. Some people don't, because it's hard, because that's not how we're socialized. And most people in groups tend toward conforming with the norms of the group, which is, again, not good or bad. It just is what it is. And that's what we see. But we're also hearing people say things and stand on ideas that they have, or build on ideas, and hearing what other people are saying too, and being intrigued by
that's
some of
what
the
I'm
things
actually kind of struck by, the degree to which people are really fascinated by what other folks are saying, and they are.
Maybe because we're all just tired of the pablum that we're being fed constantly about either caricatures of other people, or just large ideas of trends. We talked about this before. And it's like, whoa, you're that profile, but you actually aren't that profile when I listen to you. Wow. Yeah. So I do see humans continuing to be how we are.
I think a question from the stream is like this sort of radical bipartisanship. But again,
what is radical bipartisan? I mean, what's the question?
Well, so with the radical bipartisanship that we're seeing in the U.S., but again, that's only from one vision, because on the ground, it's not that at all.
But it's not just that. It's just even, I think if you look at what happened.
By the way, it's radical partisanship, not bipartisanship.
Yeah, radical partisanship. But I think there's there's so many things to talk about. But when I'm just right now thinking about the Democratic Party, and again, this isn't my area of expertise. I don't think about the Democratic Party every day for many years. But I think what we all saw was a very large field of candidates, potential nominees for the presidency, and I think clearly there was a decision made that one person could win this thing, right? And all of these individuals and people that were behind that just decided, I think, more or less happily, that's it. This was an election about beating the incumbent. That's what this, right? And so I feel like that it fits under radical partisanship, because it was a decision where the masses of people had to just made that decision, right? I think there were a bunch. I think if you look back months ago and you remember the field of candidates, right, just for the Democratic nomination, there were a lot of different things, and there were a lot of different visions, and there were what I'm saying, radical partisanship. And I think maybe people, when they're thinking about the Republican Party, are thinking about radical partisanship in a different way, or in another way, which is like party at all costs, maybe. And I think that there's, I think there's for plenty of people, there's a vision of a long-term vision of the Republican Party, and that's hard and so abandoning the party in this moment isn't a long-term vision for some people. So you could see that as radical, right? If you accept some things that are happening now in order to imagine some kind of future. Again, these are I just think that there's so many ideas that are going into the flow between what seems like just two choices always. And then there is the whole field that when we are in conflict, it's us and them, this and that, black and white, blah, blah, blah. There's two choices usually. And in the field of what I would call combat, you don't get to be thoughtful. You pick a team, you have to pick a team. And if you don't pick a team, you will be put on one team or the other. And so there's also that. And we all know that.
I'm going to ask a different question.
I hope so.
Do you,
Because I really feel like you're sending me
you.
into a corner.
And by the way, my response to Sleepy Oak on the stream is I don't think the radical partisanship is going to continue forever. I mean, it strikes me.
I hope that we see, this is where I hope that the predictions about what could happen with this kind of polarization, or in those words, radical partisanship, I hope that those are, I hope we just see other things emerging than what the...
Yeah. Yep. Hey, how do you, here's a question for you. How do you combat confirmation bias? How do you get beyond?
Wait, why are we? I feel like what is this? What is this question? Give me more context.
Well, part of it's coming off the stream, but this is my own version of it.
Anything that's happening if there is something on the stream.
Well, I'm just thinking about you. You know, I know you. I think that you are remarkably able, capable of being in multiple positions at any one time. You know, as far as anybody that I know, right? You can go down a path and come back out, and go down another one and come back out, and just do that on a regular basis, right? And you on a regular basis will just sort of do, or you have been perusing, kind of headlines and lots of different media kind of outlets, right? Just out of the curiosity that you have to say, like, hey, well, what's their lead? What are they saying?
Well, no, I wouldn't say theirs as if I have mine. I would, you know what I mean? You're like,
no, I don't know. I mean, each one.
I
don't feel like you have one.
Yeah. No, I don't.
So
it's, I mean, of course, it's deep curiosity to see, like, what are we all being
okay? So
told?
this is where I want to go, right? The deep curiosity piece that is there. Like, how do you foster that? How do you cultivate it? How do you fertilize it?
I don't feel, I don't know. Personally, I don't try to fertilize curiosity. I just keep encountering things that either don't make sense or fascinate me. But most of the time it's been don't make sense. Like, why is it that this person in my family thinks this and this person in my family thinks that? And I don't mean about politics. I mean about the same event that occurred, right? When I talk to one, I hear this, and I talk to the other, or I talk to 15 people. There are different takes. And that has always, since I was a child, not disallowed me from taking a really strong position. Because I can, and I mean, and it continues to be true, right? So I remember so many formative moments where I'll say, like, my mom was like, blah, 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 this just happened. And so I'm immediately like, okay, so that's what happened. And then I would, I don't know, talk to my little brother, and he'd be like, this is what happened. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That makes total sense. But eventually realizing, wait a second, how do I fit all these pieces together? Because they're all decent, thoughtful humans. Why would they be saying different things? And so that's just been my burden. You can't just listen to one. I don't know. It just seems to me that we would all encounter this curiosity about how is it that Sam can look at this thing and see this, and Laurie can see that, and then what are we going to pick? Which one's true? So how do we put the pieces together? I'm always trying to figure out how to put the pieces together as opposed to picking one or the other, or these 3 and those 10. It's just, so anyway, for me, that's just been, like I said, a burden that is a curiosity at the same time.
Hey, can you link that? And then I have something I want to say about Brazil in a second, but
okay,
because somebody actually, but I want to ask you, going back to that, when you talk about putting pieces together, you've been really quite interested in doing that. It takes me back to your graduate work and your study of statistics, and your kind of inability to follow that, go down that rabbit. Well, you went down the rabbit hole as far as any human. It seemed to me that you kind of saw that there's nothing there.
Well, not that there's nothing there, but putting.
Yeah. Well, hang on. But so what did you see? Yeah.
What I saw was the limits of human knowledge. That's how I named it for myself when I was finishing graduate school. And what that meant, or what that means, is that I saw that there's no I was going to say there's no promised land, but just using a mathematical structure does not lead us closer to truth than a different kind of intuitive structure, for example, of knowing, right? So a mathematical structure gives us certain kinds of information. Intuitive structures of knowledge give us a different kind of information, and they all give us a part. And so I was able to see that the God of quantitative science is just a small and it isn't the God. And so that just, so I saw that everything is once again a part of the whole. So how do we fit it together? How is it that when people are interviewed, for example, qualitative digitally, are quite different in many cases than the numbers in the quantitative data that we have, right? How is it that, and that doesn't mean that they're in contradiction, but like they give us different pieces of information, and I cannot pick one or the other. I'm always seeking, how do we put them together? So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does answer my question, really. And so if I take that up to the present day, I think one of the things that's really notable about you is that you never get very far down a particular path without saying, but at the same time, or, well, but I know I could also see, or whatever it is, you know, you'll go down, but you always will stop at some point and kind of look around and say, hang on a second.
And I think what that sounds like, or at least it sounds like to some people, is a way of diluting perspectives, or diluting the truth, or not taking a stand, or just being kind of on the fence with things, not all things that don't actually get a lot of respect. And I wouldn't actually call what you just described any of those things. I think that there is a fierce, well, actually, I think when one talks about paradox, there is a different kind of energy that's created around that word, and that paradox being able to hold the tension of opposites. And like, if you think about it, the opposites, things that we usually pick one or the other, right? But if you hold those tensions, that is what paradox actually is. And to me, paradox is one of the core shapes of the truth in life. And that is hard for us to deal with. That like something could come to you, here, Sam, take this. This is medicine. It's also poison at the same time. Everything is both, right? This thing that you think is your dream could also be outside of the lines of duality. It's more of that kind of, how do I hold the opposites, the tension of opposites, not how do I dilute things so that it actually is all gray. It's not. It's actually, the truth is a lot more fierce and robust than that, than gray.
Hey, we're going to just take a 30-second break, so I'm going to adjust the camera and get a drink of water. take care of that. Take care of a couple camera issues. Whew, it's not easy. Hey, tell me about. Say more about paradox in your reality, in your life. Yeah. Say more
In my
about
life.
That. Yeah,
I
just
think
how that operates, because you made a big statement that it's the highest form of thinking at some level.
I did not say that it was the highest form of thinking. I just think
what
it's
did you say?
I think it's a core shape of the truth.
It's a core shape of the truth, not part of the truth.
I believe.
Okay.
We can go listen to the recording, but
no. Can you say something about that? That's pretty cool, actually.
I really wish it were not the case. I really wish that it was that, something is all good or something is all bad, or I could know approaching something, whether it is going to be something that I want or something that would hurt me. I wish it was that. I wish it was like that. I wish all the good things were in one bag and all the bad things were in another bag. And so to answer your question, when I think about paradox, I think it's just fundamentally that it isn't like that. All good isn't in one bag. Good and bad are mixed together all the time. I'm just using good and bad as one example, right? It could be health and disease. It's not, health isn't all one thing and disease isn't all one thing. And many times a disease can be the what's the word? A core part of health, or our bodies or mind, spirits becoming healthy, and yet it's disease, right? Or disease. So it's just all mixed together, and that is, I wish it weren't. I really do. I wish it weren't. But what I continue to see and find thing either. And that's also difficult, again, because I'd like to just push away all things that feel bad to me, but never.
Well, how do you wish it? Well, hang on, I just want to put this up here, by the way. I just think that's a really cool statement.
I don't think that definition is as potent as it could be.
Okay, go ahead.
A statement or proposition that seems self-contradictory or absurd, but in reality expresses a possible truth. I'm like, you just fell off there. A possible truth?
Yeah.
I don't know. Kind of like absolutely true thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, but basically the idea, that it's these elements are even contradictory, like life and death. Come on, they're the opposites of one another, but somehow they exist together all the time, right? I mean, but the process of eating something means something is dying, and in the dying there is a birth happening or life happening, right? Because in the dying of this one creature, whether it's a carrot or a rodent, the life of the other creature is being supported, right? And so what is it, life or is it death? It's both at the same time.
Right.
And that is much closer to what it seems most things are. Again, I just was saying something about health, but oftentimes when we quote get sick, it's actually our bodies getting better. It's the healing that makes us feel sick.
For example.
Or many things, right? Like having a cold, the coughing and sneezing and whatevering. That's our body healing. Right?
I was saying the other day to somebody, they were talking about how it feels like, in a way, Trump, for example, they set us back, right? And he said, well, Trump also could be a catalyst, a miracle cure, and not in a way, actually. He could be the pill that's healing, not the pill that's just the poison that's destroying.
But right there. But it's not one or the other.
No, hang on, I got that.
No, wait. It's always
it's always both.
But that's exactly. But it's just that tiny little shift in the way we even say it.
You know what? In truth, that's not how I see it. So here's what I say. Trump. What I said to this person, because I was much more thoughtful. Right now, it's harder. Because I'm kind of shifting things, and a lot of moving buttons and stuff, I don't think as clearly as I.
No, I know.
as I
I'm
can.
not saying this is how you think. I'm just saying it's just the form of how you said it is an example of how we get into the trap.
Yes. So, but what I truly said in this particular case was the rise of Trump also, in addition to all the things that kind of people certainly on the left see it as, is also an important medicine for healing and for movement forward in some really positive and of course negative ways. But I was just,
you just have to, it's like, it's difficult when you're talking about something so specific. When you're talking about something so specific, right? Oh, I fell down and broke my leg, right? You can't necessarily predict what's the quote good and bad or the paradoxical nature of the singular event, right? President Trump, it's absolutely his legacy and his presidency fits into the paradoxical structure. Like nobody lives outside of it. But all I'm saying is when it's an individual example, we have to wait until something plays out before we can look back and say, wow, did you see how that was both destructive and constructive at the same time?
Yes.
Then you can see it, but you just can't in it.
So there's a comment on the stream about how it's like could be like a vaccine against some bad thought that was emerging in society, right? So I think about
what's a vaccine against a bad?
Well, maybe like let's stick with Trump here for a second. I think that's the reference. There is we could go in some really we could go in some really dark places. You know what I mean? Like any society could go in some really, really ugly places.
Well, it does, right?
Yes.
There's no society that isn't in some dark places.
In different ways.
Yeah. You just have to look around and see what it is for that particular society. But go ahead.
So I was thinking, well, kind of what we're in right now with this, what appears to be, really radical partisanship, right? These deep divisions and so on are also allowing us to seek and create the medicine. Like vaccine is, what we give with a vaccine is a very micro dose of whatever the infection, the virus, right? And so it's a microdose. So we're getting a microdose of what really could come in a serious way in terms of our social organization.
Because I think that duality is part of the structure of things as much as paradox is. When, for example, in an election, when you have anything, when you have a race or a game, and it's this team's going to win or that team's going to win, it's a false duality in a way, or false dichotomy, not false true. In a certain sense of it, but really underneath it, people are not just one or the other. At the same time, I just also want to say that false duality or false dichotomy also is the source of war, right? And whether it's true or not, and whether people are more complex than that, which I think, we will still go to war and we will still commit acts of violence and other kinds of things based on what I think is not deeply true, in the sense of like there's a whole spectrum of what people think when they're in one category or the other. So I think that's also sadly true. And I just want to say it because I don't want to pretend that this is also not potent. The division, the radical partisanship, if that's I think that's the way a person said it.
Hey, let me ask, so I want to go back to your study of statistics.
Why? Do we really have to? But I'm teasing. Go ahead.
Tell me again what's the thing that what's the deepest truth that you learned from those 5 years of studying statistics and methodology at the PhD
Quantitative methods will not save us.
Well, okay, go quantitative.
I mean, think about it though. Our healthcare, our economy, every system quantitative information. And it gets more and more to be the case, right? Education, what are the numbers? How many people did this? How many A's? How many whatever? What is the score? What's your SAT score? Those are all quantitative measures of things that are so outside of being able to be measured quantitatively. So basically, not only did I study statistics, what I studied was measurement. That is what was the 5-year plan. So how do you measure things about people, right? So I studied human development. And of course, when you think of things like health, love, a satisfying marriage, intelligence, all of these things. I mean, how do you measure those? Any 6-year-old would know. You can't, but we try, and we approximate things, and that's cool. What's brilliant about humans is that we do it anyway. And so I think that's cool that we say, all right, we can't measure intelligence, but we're just going to try to approximate something that looks like a measurement so that we can make some decisions or we can do things better. Unfortunately, we get caught up in it, and then we start to believe the approximation as if it's the measurement, right? As if SAT's equivalent with intelligence. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a small part of something. You're tapping into something, but you're not tapping into human intelligence at all, and or at least by far. And so, when I say quantitative methods will not save us, that is one of the deepest things that I could come to realize. Because when you also think about medicine and healthcare, and if you think about the quantitative measures and how we measure health and how we measure healing, they suffer from the same mathematical quandaries and measurement quandaries. And so you start to realize that all of these things that you may believe, they might not actually earn your belief if you understood what it actually was, which is an approximation of something. But usually an approximation of health or healing or cure isn't the thing itself. And so you really have to say, like, wait a minute, what am I going to do? Information is limited. It's extremely limited. And I learned that.
So, but one thing though, I think about this, right? So Sleepy Oak is saying, mentioned that in Brazil, voting is obligatory, and it's not here. And what would that mean if it was in the United States? And
that's interesting.
I wonder if I want to come back.
Yeah, I don't know how this is connected.
I'm going to circle around.
I don't know why you're making me talk about this one.
Well, I'm going to circle around.
Okay, all right.
So, I have this idea that I'm wondering if it was obligatory here for everybody between the ages of, say, like 18 and 70. That's what I think it is. I think that's what Sleepy Oak said it was in Brazil. I'm wondering if it would lead people to be a little bit more thoughtful as the, in the intervening years or as we go along.
Are people in Brazil more thoughtful?
Probably not, actually.
I mean, we could find.
Yeah,
I think you could answer the question by just finding it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
not likely.
Maybe Sleepy Oak can tell us.
I mean, Sleepy Oak. Let us know. Are people more thoughtful there? Probably not. It would be interesting, but I guess a good thing that comes out of this election is that more people did vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking, and I haven't been watching.
And I'm going to bring this back around to the other conversation.
Okay, but this is also part of a different other conversation that we were having. So I'll just say this. I know, I guess, a good number of people, I don't know how many, but many humans that were in D.C. that were protesting or speaking their political speech about the election or about the desire for Trump to have another term. Why can't I think of words right now? But anyway, I think it's actually, that's activism, right? And I feel like we tend to think of activism in actually partisan ways. And so I saw all with their kids on their backs and their signs and,
awesome.
And I was like, that's, anyway. So
like left only, no, go ahead.
No, so just to say, like, when you think of like what's good, what's bad, right? We think of all this turmoil that has been predicted post-election, and then I was looking at some of those images. That's people having the freedom to say what they want and say what they think, So
it's pretty cool.
Somehow that just anyway, just casting it in that light, I feel is really important.
And
When you talk about people being obliged to vote, for example, well, it's like, what if we saw so many people, more activism, right? And so activism comes in all shapes and sizes, right? And so what does that mean then? It's very fascinating.
Isn't it funny that when we use the term activism, we're always thinking about activism on the left, right? People out in the streets with their signs and their hippie beads and their kids on their backs,
for what are considered progressive causes, right? And yeah, I mean, and so it's like, what if we wake up, or if not we wake up, but what if like a whole other segment of the population wakes up? Could, obviously then you worry about that people were always worrying about violence occurring, but
well, people are worried about violence occurring when the left,
I know,
and their hippie beads and
no, I know. I just mean when you have, quote, two different sides rising up at the same time. We tend not to call that activism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
I hear you.
yesterday, and I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying we tend not to for obvious reasons. But I think yesterday was a good example for me of that. Like, wow, like if we have a more engaged electorate, who knows what we're gonna see in terms of what it look like.
It's also by the way,
and that wouldn't have happened without the presidency of Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like that's just a
caricature. Yeah. So but it is interesting that when white supremacists rally, like the KKK has a rally in downtown Indianapolis or whatever, nobody calls that activism, but it is activism. They're out there to recruit and to tell the world, what their perspective is and what their concerns are, and to recruit people, other followers,
to push a particular agenda,
push an agenda, and that. That's activism, right? I mean, this is, but we only see it from a certain perspective, right?
Well.
And then I want to go back to Brazil and
somehow connect that to measurement.
Yes, because I'm thinking about, I remember watching you in those 5 years of PhD study. Now, mind you, whenever you get into kind of studying at the doctoral level, people have this idea that, well, it must be really intense and really difficult, and really, it's actually not any more difficult. Or
to so disagree with you in such a profound way. I just think
hang on. No, I'm gonna go. It doesn't have to be, but if you go into the matrix, right, it gives you space in your life to go into the matrix, okay? And if you go into that matrix and really go to the outer reaches of thinking, whatever your field is, you really go there. It's not just you're not just doing this to get a job or to publish some paper in some journal that whatever. You're going to the outer reaches of thinking. You're going to push your mind into places where you've never pushed it before. And so I watched you in those 5 years, study the
regression line,
the regression line for 5 years. And I think I watched you day after day. This was, after the first year when I was living in Ecuador, when you were 18 hours a day in this research, right? When I was living with you, it was, 14 hours a day because, we had some time that we actually spent together. But most of the time we spent together, we were deeply involved in conversations about science, measurement, and I think average people aren't going to do that. They don't.
I wouldn't have done that had I not been what I felt was forced to do it. Forced by my own need to understand something, but also forced because of the nature of the program that I was in. I mean, I went to study people. I didn't actually realize I was going to be studying measurement and statistics, calculus, and all kinds of other fun things. And so I wouldn't have chosen it, but somehow once I got far enough into it, I couldn't let it go. But because I couldn't let it go, I had to actually learn things and consider things that I would have never thought to consider. Now, if I had just come in to that program as somebody interested in statistics and methods, I wouldn't have thought that deeply about it because I would have just done the work. I would have run my research program and that would have been it. But like for me, it was just a completely other paradigm that by reckoning with this paradigm, I had to reckon with everything. And
with
then,
life itself, which you did.
I did.
Right.
I had to.
Yeah.
I had to. I couldn't do it otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my goal wasn't to become a researcher in that way, and whereas I know for other people it was. And so I had to think about it and find meaning in it differently than just like, oh, I want to do this so that I can publish this paper, like you said, or whatever, because that wasn't my agenda. My agenda was actually to just figure it out somehow.
Well, there was a way in which, when you start putting these statistical models together, what you're trying to do is approximate reality, and so you're trying to operationalize reality somehow. You're taking some slice of life itself, and you're defining it in a way that can be measured, i.e., you're operationalizing it. Then you got to come up with a way to build your measurement tools around those operationalizations, and which are going to be rooted in hypothesis, depending on what your hypotheses are, right? And then you're going to go out and collect data and come back and analyze the data, and then come back and say, here's what I saw, right? So you coming at that, my recollection and sort of our conversations over the years are, you coming at that as sort of an outsider saying, oh, okay, here we go. So in a naive kind of way, right? You're like, okay, so tell me what you got, And in the end, I think suppose it was your second year, the kind of toward the end of your second year, when you now were in your sixth or seventh statistics, modeling class, right? In which you had your meltdown, which is
no, it was really a revelation.
The revelation.
The revelation was that in order to mathematically model the things we were trying to model, we would be in so many more dimensions than 3 and we cannot think beyond those 3 dimensions.
I can hardly think beyond 2.
Right, but they're right.
But with a little bit of marijuana,
no. I don't. No, there are ways. I would agree that just in the everyday understanding of information, it's hard to go beyond 2. Well, this is what we're talking about right now: duality, right? That's exactly why, because people are mostly capable of thinking in that way. 3 is absolutely possible with, I can't go into it right now, but just a certain model of thinking. But the bigger point is we have way more variables to consider than we have dimensions. And that is what is ultimately unknowable through math, not just math, because math can be psychedelic, but it's just our ability to the ability of humans to interpret that information. That's the key. Like, we have to interpret it. And so it's almost, for me, at some point, it became, okay, am I going to interpret the psychedelic nature of the mathematical information that I have? Or am I going to interpret the psychedelic nature of the observations, the live observations of life that I have right now? And in some ways, intuition and story were always central to that. Like, somehow a human has to come up with a story to put the pieces of the data together, whether the data are everyday observations of life, whether it's qualitative data or whether it's quantitative data. Always the humans have to interpret it. And that is where it always, it isn't just mathematical anymore.
Right,
Beyond the fact that at every point when you're turning life into math, it is always an approximation of something. And so you're always losing part of reality each step of the way in science. And the cool thing is, theoretically, tons of other people are also doing science and getting little pieces of reality. And then you put all the pieces together and you see the whole. But the pieces don't all ever come together. And then there is always there is the interpretive moment anyway, right? So those are all the things that you could just easily see the limits of human knowledge. In other words, that knowledge isn't outside of us. We're creating knowledge, or we're creating reality all the time.
Okay, I got you.
I don't know if you got me.
That
sounded like one of those Sam things where he's like, trust me.
I really do have.
It's a husband right over there. So I know when you're not listening.
No, listen. No, I got you. That was one of those times I just had to sit back and say, yeah, it's really.
And
it's the whole enterprise.
It's not absurd, because that's what you're about to say, because, planes fly. Every time I get on a plane, I think about my understanding of measurement and statistics and methods and whatever. And the way in which, and obviously I'm in a social science, right? So it's a different kind of approximation, or it's a different kind of data. Still, the fact that we could be so precise to get planes in the air and on the ground over and over again, day after day, year after year after year, blows my mind. So this is humans using science, right? Using this method to figure things out. So we do figure them out. But all I'm saying is, when you study science deeply and you see all the flaws, it's really always in one's mind, how is this piece of information that I've just received flawed? Where is it flawed, so that I actually, if I were doing the study, I wouldn't be able to trust this piece of information that I had. So, I mean, that's basically what happened to me. Is it's like, I don't just trust information, any information, including,
but a little bit different than the way in which a lot of people will say, statistics can be manipulated, or statistics. That's not what you're saying.
It's not can be manipulated. It's just that it's always an approximation. But it's not just statistics can be manipulated. It's just statistical information always has to be interpreted. So how it's being so right here. Here's the equation. This is what we're talking about, by the way. The equation of a straight line graph that makes sense to you, and it doesn't make sense to me. But where is God in that? God is in as you add variables. So if you have just two variables, which is what a regression line is, so you have class and race, right?
So explain that on this.
I can't, because I can't see it clearly enough.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, one of those axes would be measuring something about race, class being the other one, and then then you would be trying to create a correlation between those, right? But when you think about when you start to look at whatever the thing we would be interested, say it's something about intelligence. I hate that I'm making up such a lame example, but if you were to look at intelligence, you would quickly realize that race and class are not the only thing involved in intelligence, right? So if you started to try to model other variables, right, it quickly becomes uninterpretable, right? Because we can see a line, and if you add a third variable, you can see like 3 dimensions, like a 3-dimensional space, and you could start to make sense of that data. But after 3 variables, it's not going to be interpretable for the human mind easily.
Right.
I mean, obviously we're in big data terms now, and there's way different kinds of modeling, but that's the basic idea, is that it becomes really difficult for us to interpret. And so in one question would be, how much better are these models compared to intuition, right? And again, this is me in graduate school, right? Learning that you still have to keep interpreting the data. The humans have to interpret it. And it's just that what you quickly realize is what life is more complicated than what you can model. And again, social science is what I'm talking about.
Got you.
The variables are more numerous than what can be easily modeled. Okay, again, big data right now. There's a lot of other things going on with how things are being modeled that I'm not part of.
Okay.
So I would love to hear someone talk about that.
Well, listen, man, we went on, but this was really, I just wanted to get you down here just to kind of test a few things out and test whether, hey, by the way, can I ask either Sleepy Oak or Matt Witch 89 or somebody else, can you put in the chat whether our audio and video is synced? Do our lips, does the sound come out of our lips at the moment that it is supposed to? That's would be really nice to hear. And maybe the easiest thing to do would be to put it on to mine and see where we're at. Is it synced? That would be that information, and then we could probably be done. That was all we really needed to know. And then I wanted to get you down here to have some kind of conversation. But there, okay, hang on though. I want to just respond to something and then we can get out. Okay. The more variables we have in a system, the less probable it is that God exists. Right? For the God discussion, I'd say that the more variables you have in a system, the less probable it is that God exists. It's almost in sync here, like a fraction of a second. Oh, okay, that's good. Thanks. I would say the more variables you have, the more likely it is that God. Well, I mean, in the end, God it is, right? God's the
That's
like
a whole,
the word that we use for isness, right? So
yeah, you could say that.
yeah. It's hang on. The sound is like 1.5 seconds ahead here. That's not good. Man, I'm gonna have to fix that.
Well, at least you have the information now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we gotta deal with that. Okay, nah, I don't know if it's the internet. Okay, listen. Hey, thanks y'all for hopping in. I think we're gonna. It's interesting reading the. Yeah, it's really interesting reading the chat. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate it knowing that somebody's listening, and we will just keep moving along. And again, it's still in the process of kind of testing all the equipment, as you can see, but I think we're finally getting it somewhere that we need to go. Dr. Mulvey, you are.
That's it.
Yeah, you are on the.
I am what?
You are on the stream. The camera is on you. What do you want to say?
What do I want to say?
Hey, thanks. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
I feel like it was me just for, I don't know how long we've been doing this, just doing a test. When you say to somebody, hey, can you just talk while I test the mic? And they just say testing 1, 2, 3. I feel like that's what I was just doing for the past hour or so, just talking. For you to be able to test things.
You were. Okay,
so.
But there's nothing I can do until I try to see how I can fix that. Hey, listen. Okay, we're gonna hop off. And I'm not sure when we'll be back on. I have a feeling it will be Wednesday, however. I'll be back on. So without the Doctor of Dialogue here. So Wednesday morning, our time probably. So thanks, everybody. And I'm going to cut the stream off. So